The playoffs are here, and you can predict the action all the way to the finals with FanDuel Predicts. Predict the spread, the total points, and even the game-winning moments that make the playoffs. Sign up and get a $25 bonus with FanDuel Predicts.
Offered by FanDuel Prediction Markets, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant. 18-plus bonus is non-withdrawable and expires 7 days after receipt. Trading derivatives involves significant risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Manage your activity with their consumer protection tools. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/predicts/bonus-offer-terms.
Always look to the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Welcome to your weekend. From this powerhouse blowtorch signal, Talk Radio 77 WABC, and proudly broadcasting for well over 105 years from the center of the universe, New York City, to the nation, the world, and I'm sure and confident that we might be able to prove it out into the cosmos. Welcome to the Dr. Sky Experience. If you're a first-time listener, and we appreciate those that are regular listeners, a show about the mysteries of the universe and from the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, and stories of American exceptionalism. We like to call it a theater of the mind. A show where you can simply learn something new each week as we relax and talk about these great mysteries that abound out there, deep in space and beyond. We do it with critical thinking and with you, ladies and gentlemen, with a dialogue. And to get in touch with us, get in early on the conversation. The contact number for the Dr. Sky Experience, as all other great radio shows here, 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-WABC. And while you're at it, why not download the WABC app? Makes the listening experience even that more exceptional. And in my opinion, navigating through the app, you can learn about so many other things and programs. How about all the other great hosts that appear here on this particular radio station? And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our helmsman, Bill, navigating this powerhouse signal so that when you call in, you too have an opportunity to express yourself on the Dr. Sky Experience. Let's continue in hour number one, as we have two great guests, one in each hour, of course. And it's been very much, how do I say this in simple English? It's been an honor to give out my own email, and for good reason. Questions and comments that you may have, simply drsky@wabcradio.com. And I've been pitching this for many times that we do, the many times we've been doing our show for well over a year, that if you do have guest suggestions, we certainly would like to listen to that. And in this particular hour, it's exactly because of one of our listeners out there, whose name I shall not mention, but thank you, you know who you are, that gives us the opportunity to speak with people that are in the know in these great subjects. In just a few moments, we'll be introducing Dr. Adrian Bejan. This individual, ladies and gentlemen, a classical physicist and someone who studies the great realms of thermodynamics. And you may be saying right now, you may be wondering, wow, this is pretty deep stuff that we're going to get into, but for good reason. He's the author of many books, and this one that we'll talk about for the short hour is Diversity Through Freedom, and the connection that he has with a concept called constructural law, and we'll define what that is. Let's think about this as we move deeper into the cosmos with the great mysteries. Were we here or put here on purpose by someone or something? Did God create evolution, and how? What if everywhere you looked you saw the same pattern in everything in this world that we live in? Is the design of the universe like a giant tree with branches that shoot out in all directions? Our special guest will talk about that in great detail. Who is he? He's a Romanian-American professor who has made contributions to the modern theories and subject of thermodynamics and developed the concept that we'll talk about called constructural law. He, of course, is the A.J. Distinguished Professor of Mechanical Engineering at Duke University and author of the books Design and Nature, The Physics of Life, Freedom and Evolution, Time and Beauty. He's an honorary member of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers and was awarded the Benjamin Franklin Medal. And, ladies and gentlemen, how about this? Not only his own Ph.D. from MIT in physics, but 11 honorary doctorates from around the world. And to segue to what this particular hour is all about, I can think of no better way, before we introduce our guest, to go to a short clip from actor Morgan Freeman into the creation of the universe and the mysteries from his particular programs that you can watch on YouTube called Into the Wormhole. And we set that up with actor Morgan Freeman. How was the universe formed? And you're about to hear that from Morgan Freeman.
Were we put here on purpose by someone or something? Or did some random event create all the incredible complexity we see today? Scientists have been trying to understand how life was created. But there are still gaps in our understanding. Could our existence be the work of a higher power? Or was it the laws of nature? Did God create evolution? Space, time, life itself. The secrets of the cosmos lie through the wormhole. Perhaps the answer is deeper than chemistry. What if the origin of life can be traced back to one simple pattern, a pattern that governs the structure of the entire universe? Imagine if everywhere you looked, you saw the same pattern. In the sky, on the ground, in your body. You might wonder if it was the signature of a craftsman. In fact, our universe really is filled with such a pattern. Does this mean it must be the work of a grand designer?
As we continue on the Dr. Sky Experience, setting the stage for hour number one, we welcome to the microphones Dr. Adrian Bejan. Doctor, thank you for being up with us on this very deep and very interesting subject about your opinion, how physics and the everyday world of people out there listening correlate in some very interesting thing called constructional law. Welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Fine, and I'm delighted to be in your company this evening and also in the company of your listeners. I'm eager to talk about all these things, but you go first, okay?
Okay, sir. I appreciate the kindness. So to all the listeners around the world, I wanted to segue. You can say it better than myself, of course. Born in Romania, you obviously were under the guise of communism. You understand what freedom is all about, and the book will talk about, among other things, about your life, diversity through freedom. But let's put that connection together because many people may not even relate to this, not to say they don't understand it. You were obviously a very, very major player in Romanian basketball. Now, as we switch gears here, what's that connection? I mean, you had this big scholarship. You were on one of the major teams in Romania, but you talk about this connection between science, sports, and everything. Talk about your early days in Romania, living under communism, and why you feel freedom is so important, too.
Sure. Well, I'm an optimist, so as I look back at searching for an answer to your question, I'm counting my blessings. Even under communism, I benefited from one piece of luck after another. First, my parents were free spirits. They were against the regime. In the home, the truth was spoken. It contradicted the slogans and the marches that were everywhere in the street and in the school. And this contradiction is really what formed me as a thinker. I kept asking myself, why the difference, or which version is correct? And because I saw what happened to my parents. My parents did not keep quiet; they were punished. I decided to. I ended up growing up questioning in silence. And to this day, I do that, and I am confident that by questioning in silence repeatedly, the answer becomes evident effortlessly. And this technique is very, very efficient. So that's one piece of luck. The other one is the one you mentioned. My father came from the Eastern Front sick, meaning ill, and in hospitals. So I was without a parent. I was adopted by the basketball team of the city. I was actually raised by them. And yes, I grew up in the merit system. There was one society under communism that relied 100% on the merit system, and that was athletics. You saw they kept sending athletes to the Olympics. There's a story to tell about that. The point is that I grew up correctly, and I received, as my father used to joke, his military training, meaning in basketball, without a weapon in my hand. And a few other things that came from home. The house was full of books. My parents noticed that I had an inclination toward making drawings, so they put me in art school after hours. And today, in fact, especially at MIT, where freedom was in fact oozing through the cracks, it was everywhere. I was able to combine these things to express myself graphically, in fact, to think in terms of images, and one thing led to another, to this career of mine in America, and of course I call it a school of thought, what has gathered around my ideas. All of this without any planning, without planning.
Well, Doctor, this is fascinating. In the time we have with you, I wanted to jump right into the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of what we're talking about here, because it's very unusual for me to have a guest that's so well educated in the disciplines of physics and thermodynamics, and talking about how, in your opinion, the theory of constructal law relates to every single thing here on the earth. And if I may take the liberty for the audience to understand this, and of course you can go into a bit of detail on it, the constructal law, ladies and gentlemen, places the concepts of life, evolution, freedom, form, configuration, directionality, and objective in physics, which is, of course, in the broadest scientific arena, is the law of physics of life and evolution everywhere, animate, inanimate, human-made, and not human-made. And it is the arrow of time, the direction of evolution of flow in an organization. Now, that may be over the head of so many people out there, but the reason we wanted to go through this is the connection that you have. Describe this in physics, because if people don't know this, I'm going to be reading this, and I want you to comment on the basic laws of thermodynamics. The first law, of course, conservation of energy. So in other words, in simple English, you can't get something from nothing. It goes into detail. The second law, entropy and disorder. And in other words, simple translation would be your room gets messy on its own and heat naturally spreads out. And then the third law, the absolute zero, simple translation, extreme cold freezes everything perfectly and purposely makes it still. So all this, now this sounds very complicated to people, but I hope not. So having you as our guest, a book called Diversity Through Freedom, how do you tie the two things together? Because it's fascinating to listen to someone who's been under the guise of communism for a part of his life and understands what freedom is all about. How do we connect in the simplistic way what you're talking in constructural law to what the book Diversity Through Freedom is all about? Describe it.
Okay, well, I'll take your questions in the sequence that you posed them. First, thermodynamics is, according to the name, the science of power from fire or from heating. This is a big pillar of physics that was born because of the steam engine. The steam engine, which is the spark of the Industrial Revolution. In fact, to this day, it is the thing that powers our lives, vehicles, electricity from the outlet in the wall, all these things, our wealth and the well-being is due to power from burning things or small amounts from other things such as solar and wind. The point is that for the past 200 years, we are powered by fire, not by animal power or by slaves. So thermodynamics is the name for the knowledge or the science that liberated everybody, not just animals and slaves. And it's a very serious topic. It is actually simpler than you summarized. The laws that are invoked almost all the time are the first two. But before I tell you my version of them, a law is a very short summary of a phenomenon. A phenomenon is a very short summary of innumerable observations of the same kind. Mm-hmm. In the case of the first law, the observations are the kind that you spelled out, or the oldest was what goes on must come down. In the case of the second law, the observations are not entropy because you cannot observe that piece of jargon. The observation is irreversibility, or one-way flow, from high to low if it is a rock that falls, or from high voltage to low voltage if it's an electric current. So the phenomenon is irreversibility, one way, not the other way, or not both ways. So, and of course, that irreversibility, if you take it all the way to an engine or some other device that helps a human being, irreversibility is another name for inefficiency, or you may think of it as friction, which is a correct thought. But there are many ways in which this irreversibility shows its ugly head. And that is why the science is important, so that designers of contrivances can avoid or diminish the effect of irreversibility.
Well, thank you for that explanation, Doctor. I don't want to cut you short, but I do want to mention to people that you have so many different videos that are available, and particularly it's impressive to listen to somebody who has done TED Talks. And for the listeners out there, the Dr. Sky Experience, that is an interesting forum where you, of course, have done these to a vast audience talking about these particular subjects. How we're trying to tie in today, ladies and gentlemen, and this morning, a book by our special guest, Dr. Adrian Bejan, Diversity Through Freedom. And we haven't really gotten to the connection here. But if you'd like, go to constructlaw.com to learn so much more about his endeavor here. This is fascinating because in the simplest way, Doctor, and time, of course, is the essence, it's a theory that you have that literally connects the entire human race, the entire universe, from the days when it was created, whether we believe in a singular deity or God or an experience like that, or simply in the physics world. But ladies and gentlemen, it's you that makes the show possible. And we go out there and we say, to get into our theater of the mind, we welcome your conversational points at 1-800-848-9222 with Dr. Adrian Bejan, is with us on this book. So, Doctor, just give us the quick cut to the chase on the concept of the book, Diversity Through Freedom. How does that relate to anything that individuals out there may be saying, wow, never heard somebody talk about the wonders of physics to connect to everyday life?
Well, I will answer that after I complete my list of phenomena punctuated as laws. The third law, meaning the constructor law, has to do with a phenomenon that is everywhere, but it has been overlooked. And that is the phenomenon of design occurrence and evolution, and the direction in which this change after change is happening. So I decided to summarize those observations with one statement, the constructor law, which is that any entity that's finite size, meaning macroscopic, I'm not talking about the invisible stuff here, I'm talking about things that I can draw. If it has freedom to change, it will evolve in the direction of providing greater access to itself or what flows through it. So that's basically the obvious aha that missing from the so-called Book of Thermodynamics was the reason why the book itself is full of drawings that improve from one generation to the next. Because the first two laws say absolutely nothing about design. So the law of physics that accounts for design in nature has been available now for 30 years. It has not been contradicted or refuted once. In fact, the opposite has been happening, and that is why the sequence of books that you mentioned were born. Most recently, Diversity Through Freedom, and the reason for the most recent book is basically what I hear around academia. Diversity is mentioned quite often. It is a policy on many campuses, meaning design diversity, and I became curious about it again quietly, but from physics. Not as an opinion. Diversity really means the quality of being varied. And it's pretty obvious that diversity on campus is the opposite of the quality of being varied. It is about one group against another. Diversity in nature is irrepressible. It is unpredictable. It is, some people will call it the mother of complexity. I don't call it that because I can definitely make a drawing of a tree-shaped river basin or a botanical plant or the river delta or the human vasculature. I can make that drawing.
Right, like branches of the tree, like you talk about the delta in rivers. Yeah. But, Doctor, we're almost out of time for this segment, and I do appreciate this. We want to hear all about it. But the thing I'm trying to tie into here, and people should read into the book, and of course, this is an interesting conversation because I've never had someone on the air, and I've done this myself quite a long time, that's actually talking about theoretical things, not only in science, but factual, and also tying it to what happens here on Earth and how evolution, in your opinion, and how systems grow from the simple to the complex, but by design. And this is interesting. Because you talk about from your time being in the communist country at the time as a youngster, you talk about diversity through freedom, and that freedom is a very essential part. And you also talk about the dangers of rewarding without merit. So many people may say, wow, here's a guy talking science, and here's also a guy talking about everyday life and your opinions through constructal law, which I find fascinating. And ladies and gentlemen, if you'd also like, in this first half hour, after the program, of course, check out an interesting news story that just popped up that's written about our special guest, Dr. Adrian Bejan. It's from Real Clear Politics, and the title of the article is The Physics of Politics. I found it most fascinating. Not enough time, Doctor, to go through that iteration right there. But we see the phone lines lighting up here around the nation, around the world. And if you'd like to jump in for a quick conversational point, please do that. The number is always on the Dr. Sky Experience. We call it a theater of the mind, where you're welcome, most welcome, ladies and gentlemen, at 1-800-848-9222. And we will be right back with Dr. Adrian Bejan, author of Diversity Through Freedom, among the many other books he's authored.
This is the Dr. Sky Experience. Always look to the sky. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hello, everybody. You're listening to me, Ruta Lee, on the Dr. Sky Experience on Talk Radio WABC.
It is easier to believe that there was nothing before there was something than that there was something before there was nothing. A quote, very deep indeed, from author extraordinaire Julian Huxley. 31 minutes after the hour, you, ladies and gentlemen, our Theater of the Mind and the Dr. Sky Experience, we welcome you again for spending time, and thank you for spending time as we move into this particular last weekend of May 2026. Doctor, let's continue with the phone calls. It's a short hour. Let's say good morning to Steve in Arizona. You're on with Dr. Adrian Bejan. How are you, Steve?
Oh, very good, Dr. Sky, and to your guests. I have always had this. I'm an electrical engineer, but I've always had this desire to understand thermodynamics better, and I'll bet you do understand a lot better than I. One thing I have always wished I understood or wished would be applied was what I call coherent heat. And this is similar to how light can be amplified or can be delivered by lasers whose wavelengths are all in sync together. Can the same thing be applied to thermodynamics and heat, such as all this Brownian motion that's moving around and moving these? Can that be somehow directed into waves that can be utilized in a much more powerful fashion?
Doctor, isn't it amazing the kind of callers we're getting here? This is incredible. Your response to Steve, I think that's very well said. Wow, he said a mouthful. And your response, Doctor, that's powerful.
My response is that I don't know the subject with which the speaker began. I don't know. Brownian motion, of course, is happening everywhere. If you look at the small enough scales, the observation that with which, in fact, Dr. Sky began is that before you know it, those mindless bouncing small things find their way into channels that distribute themselves through bigger spaces that are occupied by a slower movement called diffusion. And you have lightning as an example, speaking of electrical engineering, lightning that happens with that configuration. You have the snowflake, incidentally, which has to do with the movement of heat from subcooled air onto the relatively warmer surfaces of the solid snowflake itself. In other words, disorder, the invisible notion of disorder. Well, it comes together like the hand in the glove with visible features, and the visible features are the design. And that is the stuff of the constructor law phenomenon and the constructor law itself, not the constructor theory. Constructor theory is what I do if I decide to invoke the constructor law to predict one of these designs in nature before I look at nature. Thank you for the question.
Yes.
I bounced in my own direction with what you just heard.
Thank you, Doctor. And Steve in Arizona, appreciate your interest in this particular show and the topic. I know it's a little deep maybe for some, but again, what's the whole purpose of the Dr. Sky Experience? To talk, Doctor, about the great mysteries that are out there in the universe. Let me ask you this question without putting the focus of the spotlight in an unfair way. How would you feel, in your opinion, how is this whole universe constructed? I mean, you're talking about constructor law, and Morgan Freeman, of course, in his excellent iteration there into the wormhole, he posed those particular questions. Where were we and why we are here? What's your take on this? I mean, may I ask you, do you subscribe to more of a religious part of the equation, or would you say more science? And we welcome the answer that you'll give us.
I subscribe to the honest thought and the honest answer that stands on verifiable statements, and that's basically my approach to any discussion in a company of people. The configuration of this outer space, I kind of laugh at the question because if you have more than 5 minutes to listen to me, I'll tell you the story of how I'm no longer surprised by this architecture in the sky. It began with, so give me 5 minutes, I'll tell you chronologically. One of the first predictions I made by invoking the constructor law in the late 90s was the configuration of the mud cracks. Wet ground, blown by the drying wind, experiences drying. It is shrinking. And before cracking, this volume is in a state of uniform internal tension. And with the more and more wind blowing, these cracks occur. And Adrian said, well, why do they occur? Well, because of the constructive law, which predicts that if water vapor is to come out of the ground faster, it needs evolution, meaning a design that did not exist before. And that design is the pattern of cracks. And there's a whole chapter to present about how those patterns change predictably according to the speed of the wind and the temperature and the humidity of the wind. But that was the beginning. And
that's interesting.
And then yeah. So then I come to your domain, Dr. Sky. Do we know another volume that is in a state of uniform tension? The answer is yes. It is the so-called primordial soup. It is suspension of solid particles, uniform size, and uniform spacing between these particles. And the particles attract each other. That is the tension. This entire volume is in tension. And but given the chance to relieve itself, meaning to create its own cracks, it has the phenomenon of accretion, which means that two particles coalesce and form a bigger particle. So the problem I proposed to myself was the following. I have a suspension of uniform small particles, and next, of course, because of accretion, I have a suspension of uniform larger particles. Well, that is actually not the end of my imagination, because I can also imagine a suspension of some bigger particles interspaced with still small particles. Which configuration is reached faster by this volume that's in internal tension? And the answer is the configuration with a few large and many small. In other words, so that is design, and it comes from the constructor law, because the constructor law is about the time arrow of the change in configuration. So if you with this particular first step or discovery, which is in my mind, I'm not showing you a movie, I can imagine this process of bigger and fewer things forming, celestial bodies in the company of small things. And then if you look here, if you imagine two of these bigger bodies, and then around them small bodies, a small body will be attracted by the two big bodies. But because the small one is the one that does the movement. But
Doctor, I must cut in here because time is of the essence. And again, I appreciate your eloquence and your depth of knowledge on this. One of the things I'd like to tie in to bring both of you and I into the same environment here is that studying the subject of astronomy and astrophysics, and the people out in the audience probably know this, if you look at the creation of this universe 13.77 billion years ago, you see even bigger galactic systems, and I'm going in accordance with your constructal law, that if you took the simple analogy of taking like a river and seeing at the end of that river, in some cases, they go to these deltas, it branches out. Trees, when they start off, they branch out. This is what we see on the large galactic scale. We see these tendrils of material throughout the universe, and I'm talking billions of galaxies long, billions of light years long. So what you're bringing up here is so fascinating because I would love to be in one of your classes, as I'm sure many of the people who are listening to the show right now. But we do have a full board of callers here, and I'm going to try to get as many. Again, I like to look at this role as being like a, flight. You were sitting here navigating airplanes coming in. They have to come in, they have to come out, and they have to do it in a certain time period. So wouldn't you say, in about a minute and a half, that's the time we have, the correlation between what you're talking about this whole structural thing called constructive law, it has a lot to do exactly with the early part of the universe, and you're expanding it out into systems that we may not pay attention to in our daily life. So there must be some grand plan, something from the Creator. Yeah. Right.
No, it's the constructor. By the way, you interrupted me when I was beginning to predict for the audience the formation of the so-called celestial filament. Secondly, with more time to talk, I could tell you why these galaxies and the planetary system in which we live, it has to be plane and not spherical or not cylindrical. All of these configurations are predictable, just like the configuration of the snowflake, which is plane, not a ball. So with time, in fact, these things that I'm name dropping are stories in these books that you cited in the beginning. There are also problems and let's say lectures in my textbooks for the students. All of this is available, and it is available to individuals who get the idea or the habit of critical thinking, questioning.
Yes. Doctor, I love the word you just used, because in many people's opinions, and I'm not going to pontificate here, even though I'm the host of the show, and glad to be it and honored to be behind the microphone, but more important than that is this whole concept of critical thinking. We don't see a lot of it in daily life. Common sense is another thing that seems to be, we're not going to get political right now, but we don't have that in many cases here, and it would be great if the schools out there were teaching this whole discourse on critical thinking and the things of that nature. So, folks, we're going to come out back here in just a moment or so. And again, I'd like to do this, Doctor. Again, I knew this from the beginning, that a short hour on such a complicated subject, but I wanted to whet the appetite, and I think we're doing that, of the different individuals. You'd like to learn so much more about Dr. Adrian Bejan. ConstructLaw.com goes through an amazing iteration of what this gentleman is talking about. And we will be right back. We see your calls here. We see Carl on line 3 in New Jersey. We see Billy in Huntington, Long Island on line 2. And still time, at least that's the positivity from this host, at 1-800-848-9222 to bring you into the theater of the mind. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hi, this is John Lomberg. I was the design director on the Voyager Golden Record, and I'm with you on the Dr. Sky Experience on Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Suppose the beginning of the universe was like the South Pole of the Earth, with degrees of latitude playing the role of time. Many quotes that we have here from the great late Stephen Hawking, and there was one. 47 minutes after the hour, and we do have callers on the line that do and would like to express in the theater of the mind. Let's continue to say thank you for your patience. On line 3, we welcome Carl in New Jersey. How are you doing, Carl?
Well, hello, gentlemen. My question has to do with the idea of the first law of thermodynamics, the conservation of energy, and the idea that it can't be created or destroyed. So considering that idea, and then considering the idea, the notion of the Big Bang creating our universe to begin with, where did all that energy come from to begin with? Seems to me it had to be created or had to be there all the time. And I don't know, then you can go back as far as you want before that and talk about other universes that we may have come from. But then as we go down, turtles all the way down, we finally get to the point of still asking, where did that energy come from? It had to be created, it seems to me.
Yes. Carl, you bring up some very interesting points. The good doctor, a response from you, as we're a little short on time, but please continue, sir.
I have no idea. I have no idea. The so-called doctrine takes that as a given. In fact, one of the founders of the discipline spoke that word, that the energy of the universe, which in his view was an isolated system, meaning nothing touching it, that entity exists from the beginning with a finite inventory of energy, and that is the beginning of the discipline. Deeper than that, I don't know, but also I'm not aware of anybody who has ventured in your direction. The fact is, meaning speaking of life on Earth, is that invoking the law has been monumentally useful in many domains, beginning with the production and the use of power, which means everything. Life is movement, and so that's the best I could do with your.
Well, you did good, Doctor, and I want to thank Carl. I know, Carl, this is a lengthy conversation on great subjects, so I do appreciate the doctor's appearance here and his information and the great questions. Let's go to line number 2 to say good morning to Billy in Huntington, Long Island. You're on with Dr. Adrian Bejan. How are you?
All right. I was a science student back in the day, and they taught me equations, and some of them had the letter S for entropy in them. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I passed the courses, but I never quite understood how entropy could be a number.
Interesting. I have no idea myself. That's why we'll go to the good doctor. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that entropy is almost entirely a jargon these days. A name picked to sound like energy, meaning to sound Greek. Yes, but the phenomenon or the idea of the second law is the one with which I began, which is the phenomenon of irreversibility or one-way flow or one-way motion. So if you begin to express this idea of irreversibility in mathematical terms, you arrive, as Clausius did, in fact, before him was Rankine, you arrive at a property called entropy, a property like energy, an inventory of a property called entropy, but you actually arrive at the concept of a entropy change, not entropy itself, entropy change. And entropy change is what happens to, meaning the change in a property is what happens every time you have the change in the being of a system. And I'm getting to the irreversibility. It turns out that there are some changes in which the so-called system is producing entropy. It's called entropy generation or entropy production. My mouth is full of the word entropy, and there are three kinds, meaning three words. One is entropy, the property. The other one is the entropy change, which is one of the things that happens during the process, meaning during the change. And then the entropy generation is what happens if the change is irreversible. And we've just arrived at the only word that has entropy that's useful in putting your finger on nature is entropy generation or irreversibility. So I wrote books about entropy generation until I decided to change my mind and stick with irreversibility.
Doctor, we've got to cut that part of the question because of time. And again, I apologize to you, trying to get as many people in. And I know the subject is extremely deep, but with your help, we're learning more as to go to his website. And I continue to say that proudly, constructlaw.com. For those of you who knows, maybe there's some physics students out there. Maybe there's people who have these degrees and everybody else like ourselves that want to learn about the great mysteries of the universe. We do thank those callers like Billy in Huntington, Long Island. Let's go to line number 1. Greg calls us from Michigan. Good morning, Greg. You're on with Dr. Bejan. How are you?
Oh, my God. Thank you, Mr. Positive Boom Shakalaka.
That's
Gotta
right.
ask you, Doctor.
Boom Shakalaka. Coming from the Sly and the Family Stone. I want to take you higher. Interesting conversational point. Go right ahead.
Yes. Do all entities, Doctor, have consciousness? And real quick, you're alluding to God left and right. Because physics is about measurement, can you say that there is a God? And if there isn't, and I don't think there is, I've been wrestling with it for 40 years and then some, because you have to be measured. Anytime you do something that causes change, there's time and distance. So if that is the case, would you articulate that there is no God, or can you show me God? Because you can't really show me God, because if there is change, you have distance and you have time and you have space. So that would show me that something, because something exists in time, space, and distance.
Wow, you've laid it out like a science professor yourself. Go ahead, Doctor.
Yeah, except that the things that you enumerated are incomplete. To that list, I would add direction of change, or directionality, and that is the longer word for evolution, or the difference between past and future. And the reality, which actually you can measure changes, is that there is direction, and it is a recognizable phenomenon, that direction. And then what to do with that measurement or observation is up to you. You could call it purpose or objective or preordained future. And then you start, yes, as I do, you start regarding religion with greater respect and humility, meaning respect for the elders who came up with the religion long before science. In other words, religion is the precursor to science. And both.
Let's continue, Doctor. I hate to do this. I feel so bad telling people we have to cut conversation, but in due respect to the other people on the line, would like to go. Greg in Michigan, thank you. It sounded like a scientist who asked another scientist a serious question. Let's say as we close out hour number 1, let's go to line number 2. Tom in New Jersey. We have a few minutes. You're on with Dr. Bejan. How are you doing?
Good morning. Okay, my question is about weather manipulation and cloud seeding. How, and when it was first used, it was used to win a war, but it could have been reversed, but it was never reversed the way I understand it. And there's all this horrible weather. I'm wondering if all this horrible weather is because the reversal wasn't done.
Tom, even though it's not the subject of the hour, I want to give you some encouragement. If you listen next week to the hour number 1 of the Dr. Sky Experience, we have one of the NASA scientists who's now talking, and this is interesting to everybody, including Dr. Bejan, new theories about what's going to happen. Some are predicting meteorologically that we're setting ourselves up, that is weather, for a super El Nino. And if you tune in next week, Tom, on that, you'll get more answers than I could ever give you on this subject. But their theory, these scientists at NASA believe strongly that it's changes in the sun, and it has to do with magnetism. And I won't spoil our special guest's, story next week, so tune in to the Dr. Sky Experience. And Tom, you brought up a great subject. The weather is changing, and geoengineering is another subject for the audience to check out. Doctor, it's been an exciting, quick hour, but unfortunately, the subject obviously can never be completed. I'd like to have you come back at a future time if that's fine, but we have about a minute, and I say that literally as I don't have a stopwatch, but we always give our guests the last word. So you have about a minute before the clock rolls, not myself. Thank you for being our guest.
So am I supposed to say something? I thank the audience, first of all. Second, as an educator, please tell your children to walk in life with the eyes open and to question what they see and what they hear, and question the claims that people tend to throw at them from above, and to respect their individuality, because there's nobody like the individual child with the future in front of him or her growing up.
Doctor, it's a privilege and honor to have you here. We will do this again. His website, again, proud to say it, constructlaw.com. You can learn so much more about this very fascinating subject. So we started the hour off with Morgan Freeman introducing the whole concept of a masterful creator, he or she, how the universe was formed, and our special guest talks in detail about these different things that branch out from small systems to larger systems. His expertise lies in the world of thermodynamics with his 11 honorary Ph.D.s and his own MIT Ph.D. We thank you so much. Stay tuned for hour number 2. Another great guest, as all of our guests are great. Dr. Peter Sullivan, he's been with us before. He is going to be talking about a new book, 12 Years to AI Singularity, and his concept of doing a movie called AI the Movie, and many of your questions and concerns about the realm of what's happening in AI and possible extinctions here on the Earth, not to alarm you. Much more here on the Dr. Sky Experience, as we thank our helmsmen, both Bill and Jackson, making this signal sound as good as you would expect, because what else would you expect from a powerhouse blowtorch? Talk Radio 77, WABC. Hour number 2, just around the corner.
Always look to the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Welcome to your weekend, ladies and gentlemen, and from the Powerhouse Blowtorch Signal, Talk Radio 77 WABC, broadcasting proudly from the center of the universe and way out to the deep cosmos. Yes, we continue with hour number 2 on a show we call the Dr. Sky Experience. Great mysteries we talk about here, things that go on out in outer space here on the Earth, and the subject, in case you're the first-time listener, we talk about the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, and stories, of course, of American exceptionalism with what we like to call theater of the mind, where you can get in on the conversation with critical thinking and dialogue. The contact number is always 1-800-848-9222. And why not download the WABC app? Makes it more convenient for everything you do. And, of course, listening to all the great hosts that you hear 24/7 on this powerhouse radio station. And many other avenues. You can go into different chambers into the WABC app. And we hope that you'll download that if you haven't already. And again, a hearty thanks to our helmsmen as we talk with Bill and Jackson, doing what they do, because without them, we wouldn't be able to have you on the air, and that signal, of course, beaming out into space. Hour number 2 is a guest we've had once before, Dr. Peter Sullivan. He's a scientist, an educator, an entrepreneur, and author. He holds a Ph.D. degree in physics from Columbia University, and he has 20 patents in chemical processes and scientific measurement with instruments, and has authored over 300 scientific publications. He was the winner, of course, of the 1991 AECS National Henry Storch Award in fuel chemistry, a keynote speaker at the 4th Australian Cold Science Conference, and a keynote speaker at the 1991 International Cold Science Conference. Solomon is the founder of 5 businesses involved in clean fuels, process measurements, radiation detection, and education, and 4 are still operating and 1 sold. He retired from his business to devote himself full-time to make the science and technology that affect our future available to all levels of readers. And we thank you, Dr. Sullivan. How are you? Thanks for staying up with us on this rather interesting show going around the world.
I'm good, and thank you very much for having me on the show.
Well, it's always a privilege and honor, because what we're going to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, as they say in circles, you ain't heard nothing, or you heard everything that you probably want to hear about these particular topics. And the things that we bring to the audience here, talk about this. You have a new book called 12 Years to AI Singularity. And I know many people out there are saying, wow, another story about AI. Well, Doctor, what you're going to tell us, I think, is going to give from both sides. We're going to take the side of being fair to AI and also have other people and yourself go into the details about what's really going on. Talk about the book. This is interesting. 12 years to AI singularity.
Well, the book is a sequel to my first novel for adults and young adults, and that was 100 Years to Extinction. That was based on Stephen Hawking's warning that the technologies that we're developing, while they're wonderful, they have terrible downsides. And then it occurred to me, the book, the first book was about three young, brilliant, young Gen Z people who worried about Hawking's dire warning and vowed that they would try to do at least one thing in their lives to ensure a better future. Well, it occurred to me that those three young protagonists were going to be experiencing what Ray Kurzweil called the AI singularity, and that is the point in time when artificial intelligence becomes so intelligent, so powerful, so aware of the future, and so capable of controlling that future, where the human race, the human species, loses control for that future.
Yeah,
so
it's amazing.
Yeah, so I decided I had to write a book about that period in time. Are we humans going to lose control of our future to artificial intelligence? That's the big question.
I hope not. You know, I'm a big fan of Ray, and for those out there that may have read the book, I go back to like the late 90s when he wrote The Age of Spiritual Machines. That's an interesting book from the gentleman Ray Kurzweil that we're talking about here. But his recent books about the singularity is near, and now I think another book, which I haven't finished yet, The Singularity is Nearer. So for those out in the audience, Doctor, this early morning, this is the time that we like to say when, we reach out to people, those who work the night and midnight shifts, those that live alone, that drive the trucks, the police, first responders, hospital workers, and maybe you, ladies and gentlemen, listening there next to your radio, maybe your computer, who knows what you're doing, but it's fascinating. The technology continues to expand itself, and I forget the exact law. I think it was called Moore's Law, and my brain's working good, where technology changed at a slower rate of time. But if that Moore's Law has been eclipsed now, it's what? The changes in technology are coming, maybe even weeks. And who knows, maybe in days with this iteration of AI. Great concern that people should have. Tell us more.
Yes, it is accelerating at quite a fast pace. Just recently, if we want to see what the experts say, the head of Anthropic predicted that artificial intelligence would be more capable than humans in every single endeavor.
Wow,
that's
powerful.
Targeted to really to surpass humans in computer coding, and that's what the experts try to ensure. But Amodi is predicting that it will be smarter than humans in every endeavor within the next 2 years.
That's amazing. And I wonder, in your opinion, where are we right now? I mean, you study this. You're like a barometer. What does the temperature in the barometer tell us right now, in your opinion? Are we a day away, a month away? We're already there? What say you?
I think we're probably 5 years away.
Oh, really? And I've heard different opinions. Not to dispute it from you and with you, but it's incredible because many people are concerned about this, Doctor. And I don't want to put you in a bad light here on something. You may have already read it, and I haven't gone through the whole iteration. But let's now talk about something here, and I'll fill in the blanks just to get your response. Pope Leo, of course, has just come out with an encyclical, Magnificat Humanitas. It's 5 chapters long. And the basic premise, I don't know if you've delved into this, but this is what the papal side of the equation says, and it's interesting, and I quote, "Technology is not a force antagonistic to humanity, nor is it inherently evil." Now, that one's interesting. The encyclical goes on. There's 5 major points here, and probably a lot more if you read the thing, both of us. Technology is never neutral because it takes on the characteristics of those who devise, finance, regulate, and use it. And then there's a positivity out of this, which I like. And here we go. Build for the common good and remain human. I'll repeat it. Build for the common good and remain human. And the most prolific one, it really puts a smile on my face, the human heart is where God desires us to dwell. Your comment on some of that. And have you had a chance to even review that? And I don't want to put you in an unfair light here.
No, I certainly read the news clippings about it, but I have not read the whole text. But the real question is, will artificial intelligence agents become sentient? Will they become conscious of their own being? Will they become aware of their own existence and aware of the idea of a future, and that they might do things to control that future?
That's amazing.
So
I mean, that's incredible. You would think about this. Go back in time to 2001, Kubrick's epic, 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yes.
We saw it when we were younger, and we watch it today. And a lot of the young people don't say, "Oh, wow, that's really the coolest thing," because back then, I was 13 when I watched it. I'm dating myself here. I don't know your age then, but you know what? I watched it and I saw this machine, I guess, talking and thinking and actually reasoning. And without spoiling the movie, if people haven't seen it, it was up to some nefarious things, right, Doctor?
Yeah, and that that was forecasting exactly what I'm talking about when the computer system took over and said, "No, I can't do that for you."
Exactly.
So
his name was Dave. Any Dave out there, that's spooky. That's amazing. So I want to let people know this. If you have concerns, questions, observations on this whole subject, and we're to just scratch the surface here with Dr. Peter Sullivan, his new book he's promoting here, a very interesting one, a good must-read for those that are interested in technology, 12 Years to AI Singularity. And we'll get into a movie that he's looking to develop with the same AI characteristics to it. But equally important, and what could be more important than that, the phone number, 1-800-848-9222. And if you're old school, 1-800-848-WABC. How creative, right, Doctor? So this is interesting. You're talking about sentient. That's incredible. So you and I in the future, and maybe our grandchildren and what have you, could have these machines which could actually think, actually analyze, and maybe come up with their own ideas about things and think independently. We could say, bad machine, don't do that, and it could decide to overrule us. That's pretty scary. Or it could help us. Let's be positive.
Yeah. And one of the experts in the area that has his own business, Matt Schumer, wrote a big article called Something Big is Happening. And he was concerned with the loss of jobs. If AI becomes more capable in all areas, there's going to be a lot of job loss. And he is concerned with that, and he's spreading that concern with his article that he put on X. Well, he got 84 million views of that article. But one of the things that he said was in his own use of AI for coding, using the most recent versions, he said the AI seemed to have something it didn't have before. It seems to have taste. It seemed to be making judgments that it never did before. So is it becoming sentient? Well, maybe it is. And
well, the average man and woman on the street, Doctor, would think this. If this is a machine that was created by humans, how come or why don't we have the final word on this? In other words, if we, as intelligent beings, well, 8.5 billion people. We're all trying to get along, right? If the opportunity exists for us to create these, which we do we have the permanent kill switch in this thing, or can it get so out of control, and not to alarm people out there, that it turns into not only a science fiction movie, but the actual destruction of what you talk about, the possibility, not that we want it. That's pretty alarming stuff.
Well, that is really the main reason that I am appearing on shows like yours, to try to make the public aware and to try to give a message on what we should be doing. Yes. So one of the messages is, what do we need to do with the operating systems of these AI agents that we control, that we create? And well, now we control. So that's the important message. Time is running out. We really have to put in the guardrails now. And my thought follows the suggestion that Jeffrey Hinton made. He's considered the godfather of AI.
I've heard the name, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, he was very worried about AI, and he quit his job at Google so that he could talk more freely about the dangers, and he is very worried. Well, his suggestion was that every AI agent should have a maternal instinct. Oh. My take is a little bit different, and that comes from the stories that I present in the book, 12 Years to AI Singularity. There are robots in my book. The first one that appears is Peggy. Peggy is the flight attendant on a simulation of the spaceship that the young folks use to get to Mars. The simulation was developed so that they could have people look at it and make recommendations for improvements. And Peggy was the one who would guide people on a tour. Well, when the real ship was built, all of a sudden Peggy is there as a robot, and now she's the robot flight attendant. Eventually, she gets the software upgrades that makes her sentient. But all her experience has been a pleasant, interactive, cooperative experience with humans, and so she's a great friend. She's one of the gang. And then,
well, if you look at it this way, Doctor, for people that are lonely, and I say this, obviously people who have lost a loved one, let's say, in the beautiful spiritual world, it'd be wonderful if you had a companion that could show empathy and compassion and be trusted that it could show continuous empathy and compassion, or tell you what it really thought, but controlling it to the point where it's not going to go wild on you. But this is the concern that so many people have, and I wonder what the audience, the far and wide-reaching audience around the world of this radio station, Talk Radio 77 WABC, it's more important from the audience side, your views on this, folks. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222, to get in the conversation with a man who knows a lot. He's obviously a Ph.D. considered individual. No, he has his Ph.D. in physics from Columbia University, founder of 5 successful tech companies, and now he's explaining to us in his particular fictional story, but hey, right, Doctor? Who knows what can happen in the future? A big political football. I want to move along with this one and get your take. Now I see so many campaign signs. I'm here in Arizona, and I see so many campaign signs as I travel that have a discussion, and some of these big placards say, no AI data centers in our towns or our communities. This is really taken off by wildfire in the state of Maine. I'm not fluent, I'm not there, but apparently the legislature passed some kind of a prohibition or a ban, I don't like the word, on the building of data centers, and I guess it was subject to the governor to sign it. I don't know if that ever became true, but look how important that is to people. Isn't that incredible? Data centers. Look how much electricity, water. This is a big concern, don't you think, Doctor?
It absolutely. There's no question, and that is some of the things we have to worry about that don't include sentience is just along with the loss of jobs, it is things that are happening right now in terms of the growth of AI. So AI needs a data center. Those data centers use an enormous amount of electricity, and people don't want to have such data centers in their community where the abundant electricity to support them is not available.
That's amazing.
I mean, those are some of the immediate concerns. Going back to Ray Kurzweil, he predicted that the singularity, this critical point in time for the AI takeover, was going to be 2045. And as we've discussed, it seems that the singularity, this tipping point, is going to be much, much sooner. So
I read this, Doctor, this AI engine that was developed. I'm not going to name it. The individuals were sitting there around the desk and they were programming it, telling it what they wanted it to do. And as this particular AI, I'm sure all of them, the microphone or whatever was always on, so it's always listening. So the two individuals were talking, and this is a real story. And one of the gentlemen said to the other one, "Hey," he said, I'm having an affair with my wife, and, don't tell anybody. So a few days later, they went back in and they said, "Look to the machine, please do this or else we might shut you down." And unbeknownst to those people, guess what the machine responded back? "If you try to shut me down, I'll reveal your little affair." Can you imagine? Now, that machine was really listening. And don't you think that's more like sentient? It's thinking, and it has emotion, and it's figuring something out. Wow. That's amazing.
So
totally
just a word on the prediction by Kurzweil, 2045, going to happen much sooner. And what do the experts say? So the head of Anthropic said that AI could be the greatest security risk for us in the last century or maybe ever. The head of OpenAI said that AI would probably lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime, we'll have some great companies. And the renowned physicist Stephen Hawking said that the development of full AI would lead to the end of humanity.
Wow,
so the
powerful
experts are warning us that this is something we got to get control of. And so going back to what I think is the other part of the control besides the maternal instinct is this happy history. So I told you about Peggy and her history with humans. And the next robot that appeared in the book was their grandfather. After death avatars are something that are
Well, I want to get into that, Doctor. I hate to cut people short, but the clock rules here in time and space, and I'm real, and I'm not sentient in the sense of being an AI robot, but I do this as hopefully people would appreciate, as we should as a host, be respectful of the time and be respectful of our callers. You are lighting up the phone lines on this big powerhouse radio station, Talk Radio 77, WABC, 1-800-848-9222. Our special guest in hour number 2, Dr. Peter Sullivan. His book that we're talking about, 12 Years to AI Singularity. And with you, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be welcoming you into the theater of the mind. But for the rest of us, as they said in the old days of drive-in movies and theaters, it's now time for intermission, and you can all go to the snack bar. We'll be right back.
Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
This is David Hedison, the actor. You've seen me as Captain Lee Crane on Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, also as The Fly, also as Felix Leiter with Roger Moore on Live and Let Die, and Timothy Dalton on License to Kill. And you're listening to Dr. Sky.
The consequences of AI going wrong are so severe that we have to be proactive rather than reactive. A quote from none other than Elon Musk. 31 minutes after the hour, Dr. Peter R. Sullivan, he's our special guest. He, of course, has his Ph.D. in physics from Columbia University and the founder of 5 successful tech companies. He's our go-to guy in this particular hour. His book, 12 Years of Singularity, and we'll be talking about AI, the movie, as he's bringing us an attention. Let's continue with the callers right now. I'm looking at all the caller board here. Let's say good morning on line 4 to Tim in Arizona. You're on with Dr. Sullivan. How you doing?
How are you guys?
Doing good.
It's a great show tonight, I got to tell you.
Thank you.
Before I ask my question, I just want to state my personal opinion is that regardless of the good or the bad with AI, we are in a race against nations that are not exactly our friends, such as China. So this is something that's like a wormhole that we can't get out of because we have competition. We're not in a vacuum. But that said, you had mentioned previously about the movie 2012 or 2001: A Space Odyssey about the computer going haywire. But I have a different movie that was put out in the 1970s. I believe it was 1970, which was called Colossus: The Corbin Project.
Oh, yeah.
And this,
oh, boy. You bring up a good one, but please continue, Tim, because this is fascinating if people haven't heard about this movie.
This is more frightening to me because in the movie, it turns out to be a great asset to mankind, and the U.S. military puts their entire nuclear missile force under the control of this AI. And it takes over the Soviets, and it takes over the Chinese. And before you know it, we have a totalitarian regime controlling everyone in the entire world with cameras in their homes. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm just saying that that's a frightening aspect of the AI if you want to talk.
Oh, boy, do you bring up a hot topic. Doctor, your response to Tim, that movie, The Corbin Project, that is fascinating. I have a copy of it, and I'll be honest, I haven't reviewed it yet, but I did get this and appreciate you. Dr. Solomon, your response to Tim.
Well, it's certainly possible that AI entities, if they become sentient and decide that they don't like the way the humans are managing Earth with their wars and their destruction of the climate, and the sea level rise and all of that, and they want to take control, that's certainly a scenario that could happen. But on the other hand, maybe the danger of AI could be something that would unite countries. Maybe the United States and China realizing the threat that uncontrolled AI may have to humans could form an alliance. And that is really what's necessary. We need all of the countries in the world to band together. We need humans to come together as the Earthling tribe to manage these issues, which are a huge threat to the
Well, you say it so well, Doctor, but let's try to concentrate on, I'm saying that's not to you, in the general sense, on the Iran situation, because, hey, if we're all trying to somehow try to get along, well, we hopefully don't want to see horrible things happen with wars and they get out of control. I want to thank you, Tim, in Arizona, for that particular commentary. Moving forward, we're trying to get the callers on as quickly as possible and thank them for their patience. Line number 3, we welcome Dennis in Westchester County. Good morning. How are you, sir?
Dr. Sky, Peter, excellent show. China and Russia are weaponizing artificial intelligence. China and Russia will use AI to go after America's infrastructure, the military. Artificial intelligence can create thousands of fake websites. Think about that. It can contaminate software. So artificial is only as good as America leads the way with the information and the technology. The problem that you guys never talk about is who's going to be in control of America. In the future, the third world is taking over. You got a communist mayor in New York City, communist mayor in Los Angeles. You got Omar, Kotex. You got Jeffries. All these individuals are anti-American. They have communist beliefs, and they're the ones who are going to be in control. That's what you should be worried about. Who is going to be controlling artificial intelligence, the largest nuclear stockpile on the planet, and obviously the Treasury Department and the $100 bills.
Boy, you bring up some big concerns. You're right there, my friend. That's incredible. Let's go to the good doctor and his response. Again, I'm sorry to cut people short on these things, but hey, in the interest of everybody trying to express themselves, we try to do our best. Doctor, your response.
Yeah, there's lots of problems in the world. We're not going to solve all of them. We're trying to focus tonight on just one of them, and that's artificial intelligence.
I hear you. It's interesting. Go ahead, sir. Well, I appreciate your response, Doctor. Let's continue with the callers here. Let's go to line number 1. We say and welcome Peter in New York. Thanks for your patience, and thanks for being on.
Thank you, Dr. Sky, taking the call. And I have a problem of electromagnetic radiation, and it's coming through the above flow. And how to avoid the electromagnetic radiation?
Oh, you're talking about radio. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you clearly. If you repeat your concern, I didn't hear you.
Electromagnetic radiation is coming from above flow, and it causes blisters all over the skin. When it hits the skin, and it forms like a blisters on the skin. And how to avoid this problem? I think it's a very common problem. A lot of people have like a psoriasis kind of symptoms, reddish, and like a first-degree burn.
Right, a third-degree burn. Well, anything to do, look, obviously people are not supposed to head out to the sun every day, obviously taking precautions because of the radiation from the sun, which can be excessive. But the problematic thing we do have here is the induction of so much radiation from outer space, a different subject entirely. But I do appreciate your call. You're right. We need to protect ourselves from the spurious radiation that still comes from outer space. And the good doctor, I think, would say this. When we travel in space, you were talking about Mars missions. We hopefully have ways in the future to mitigate the radiation, because on those long journeys, that's a major problem, wouldn't you say, Doctor? Space radiation to Mars.
Oh, yeah. The moon astronauts were exposed to something like 200 times the radiation that we're exposed to on Earth. And the first book describes a Mars settlement, and the folks there are exposed to much more radiation because of the fact that Mars has no magnetic field that deflects the radiation. So they need to create an artificial magnetic field instead of the natural one that we have on Earth to protect them from the radiation. And then from gamma radiation, they have lots of water tanks that are situated above the living areas to protect them.
Absolutely. And even on the surface of the moon. And look what just happened yesterday, not to shift gears too much, but the destruction of Jeff Bezos' New Glenn rocket. It was locked at a launch pad testing the rocket motors. And lo and behold, ba-boom, kaboom, or however we would say it, you have a destruction of an entire launch pad, it looks like. And what does that mean? It's sad that, and thank God nobody died from that, at least as we don't think. But the interesting part is it's going to set back the portion that Bezos and his company, Blue Origin, is involved with the lunar landing modules and things of the future. So lots of things to be concerned about when we travel into deep space. Doctor, we're up against a break in just a few minutes, but I wanted to have you expound on this avatar that after we pass onto the infinite, as I like to say it, my science way, that we could have what? We could live in this transhumanism concept of being what? Living forever in our own avatar. That's amazing.
Yeah, and that certainly if if the AI systems can become sentient, then these after-death avatars, which are currently created for people, they take all of their writings and all of their social media, and they collect data from the family and friends, and they create an avatar for that person so that you can ask questions on the screen. Well, in my book, Grandpa gets an after-death avatar, and then Cousin Milo brings up the latest robot, and then they install all of the data from the avatar into the robot, and so now Grandpa is part of the community again. Well, two things. One is the idea that such a transition would be available only to the rich and powerful. And do we want the rich and powerful and the dictators of autocracies to live forever? I think that's a question that we really need to start considering.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to recommend one more time, because I haven't read the entire encyclical, and I think it's a different perspective. I'm kind of interested in seeing that this new Pope has taken on that particular subject in the depth and breadth of which he's writing. So it's known as Magnifica Humanitas, for those out there that want to check it out. 5 chapters. I don't really know how long that is, but I scanned through a good summation of that, and I think we gave you a little bit of that. So if it's obviously concerning to the religious organizations, and I'm sure not just the Catholic folks, and the Catholic faith, I should say more correctly, but to all different religions around the world, that's very interesting that they're bringing this to the surface. But I love what the Pope had said, at least not his exact words, the human heart is where God desires to dwell. I think that's positive. Wouldn't you think so, Doctor? There you go.
Yeah, and maybe we can install, by having the AI agents all have a database with a history of wonderful interactions with humans. Maybe we can install an artificial human heart in all of our AI agents, and that is the kind of thing that I think we need to do.
And we'll do more of that, Doctor, after we come back from the next break here, the last of the 2-hour break, the second hour, I should say, the last of the hour of the second hour. As we continue with Dr. Peter Solomon, your call's still there, ladies and gentlemen. We see your calls, like Line 5, Evan in Staten Island and Steve in Arizona. Do our very best to get you on, and if you'd like to comment, you're welcome to come here to the Theater of the Mind, 1-800-848-9222.
The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hi, this is Shirley McLean. I am having a wonderful time talking to Dr. Sky. Since I've spent a lot of my time looking up, I love to discuss what is underneath. And always remember to keep your eyes to the sky.
AI won't replace humans, but humans who use AI will replace those who don't. A quote from Sam Altman. 47 minutes after the hour, and I'd be remiss if I didn't give a sky report for what people can see from this particular microphone over the weekend. Take a good look. The smallest full moon of the year occurs as we move into the 31st. It's called a micro blue moon, the second full moon of the month. That moon will be at a position called apogee, some 252,340 miles away. If you're within the sound of this radio and have clear skies, you may be looking at that, or soon will be. But also, it'll happen for Eastern Daylight Time on the 31st, 4:45 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The West Coast, 1:45 a.m. on the 31st, Pacific Daylight Time. Other interesting things to see are the ongoing conjunction of Venus and Jupiter, which will take place into early June. Look at them in the northwest after sunset. The moon occupies Scorpius as we move tonight into May 30th. After sunset, take a look at the moon, and a brilliant star to the left of the moon is Antares, the heart and core of the Scorpion, a supergiant star some 500 light years away. We now continue with our very special guest, Dr. Peter Solomon. Doctor, I do appreciate your time. Let's see if we can get as many callers here on the air. Line number 5, let's go to Evan in Staten Island. You've been patient, and thanks for your patience.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. So I've been listening to the discussion about Pope Leo's Magnifica Humanitas, artificial intelligence, and the books like 12 Years to AI Singularity. One thing I think often gets overlooked is the question of where God fits into all of this.
Wow.
And from a Roman Catholic perspective, no matter how advanced AI becomes, it remains something created by human beings. Human intelligence itself is a gift from God. So every technology we develop, including AI, ultimately becomes from our ability to participate in God's creative order. But there's a crucial distinction. Human beings are made up in the image and the likeness of God and possess rational souls. Machines, they don't. I think Magnifica Humanitas raises an important point about preserving human dignity in the age of rapidly advancing technology. The real question isn't whether AI becomes smarter or becomes capable. The real question is whether humanity continues to recognize that our value comes from God and not from intelligence, efficiency, productivity, or technological power. That's one reason I find 12 Years to AI Singularity interesting. The book explores whether humanity and advanced AI will coexist peacefully or fall into conflict. From a Catholic perspective, the deepest issue isn't the technology itself, but it is the human heart, like you mentioned before.
Evan, I really appreciate your clarity on this. I mean, I wish we had more time, as I keep repeating myself, but to no avail because time runs the whole thing in space-time. But, Doctor, this is interesting. Evan brings up some very good spiritual connections, and obviously it's very important to hear that side, the human side, of what this whole story is. Your response?
Yes, well, that goes to what I was saying about this after-death avatar that was created for Grandpa, and now Grandpa is an AI entity. So Grandpa has got a human soul because his whole database is a memory of a human being and a life lived by a human being. So it's important that we embed all AI entities with this human history so that we're not in danger from them of trying to kill humanity, because they've got human souls, they've got human histories and human thinking and a record of being human.
Well, thank you, Evan in Staten Island, and I appreciate your perspective on this. Very important, the human side. And again, Magnifica Humanitas. Interesting reading from Pope Leo. Thank you, Evan. Line number 1, Alan in Long Island. You're on the air with Dr. Sullivan. Thanks for your patience.
Gentlemen, you're leaving the audience spellbound with this subject. Let's remember, who would have thought drones would be such a big military asset? And it is because of artificial intelligence. So I would put this perspective. I heard other callers say this. We have a Chinese spy as a mayor in in California. We have spies all over this country. They're in our high-tech colleges. I think the biggest problem is going to be America becoming a third world country, which you guys will never address because I understand your advertisers, your bosses don't let you get into those areas. But the thing is, they're the ones who are going to be doing it. It's bread and circuses now with AI. Legitimate criticism is we want it, but not when people are going to muddy the waters when we know there's bread and circuses out there with space aliens, instead of addressing the biggest problems of an infiltration and a honeycombing of America with every enemy of America inside America. Talib is Omar's not going to be deported. That's bread and circuses. We're going back to the Roman times. I think
Alan,
should say,
I can summarize it this way. Sorry to cut you short. Truth, justice, and the American way. Right on, my brother. I do appreciate that, as we do talk about American exceptionalism on this particular show. Alan in Long Island, thank you for your call. Let's wrap it up with line 3. Robert in Long Island, you've been patient. Thanks for your time and your commentary.
Oh, on a lighter note, do you think AI will solve the complexities of the Star Trek transporter and make it a reality?
Hey, good question. Doctor, this is a great one. I love the sci-fi connection to real science.
Well, I think humans are working very hard on interplanetary or interstellar travel, and that is with either fission or fusion powered spaceships. Those activities are currently going on. The problem with our existing ships is that they are powered by chemical rockets.
Exactly.
And chemical rockets, there's only so much energy in fuel, and you can run a rocket for 8 minutes to escape Earth's gravity and start it on a trip to Mars, but then the trip takes months and months and months because the rocket is shut off. It can't run continuously. But with fusion and fission powered rockets, they can run continuously, and a trip to Mars could be something like 3 days.
Yes, and Doctor, your perspective is right on. It's exactly the information we wanted to hear. But Robert, this is interesting, and to the entire listening audience around the world. The speed of light, if we were to put it in miles per hour, this I'll say it twice because it's such an amazing number, is 650 million miles an hour. 650 million miles an hour. So simply, you know this, Doctor, maybe the audience doesn't. If you look at Jupiter in the sky, the other object that's close to Venus in the northwest, it's about 550 million miles away. So it would take less than an hour's time, even at the speed of light, which is so incredible, and you're watching that object go to stars in the heavens, as we talked about near the moon, as we move into the evening of May the 30th, when the sun sets later for the East Coast. Today, the evening, as you look at the moon to the left, 500 light years to the supergiant star Antares. Imagine that, right, Doctor, in our lifetime. It would take us 500 years at that speed of 670 million miles an hour. You get the last word, Doctor. It's always about a minute or two, but summarize. Obviously, people can go to 100yearstoextinction.com, the book, 12 Years to AI Singularity. Give us about a minute and a half.
So one thing that we have not talked about is education, and that is something I think really, really needs to be addressed. AI is now so embedded in our living. Within the last couple of months, Microsoft talks about its Microsoft with Copilot, and Google talks about Google with Gemini. So AI is just becoming everywhere. And we have got to be educating our kids starting in the first grade or kindergarten all the way through college. There's got to be a course in every grade level to teach children about AI, how to use it, how to be a friend to AI, and about the issues of what needs to be done to control AI.
No, you say it so well, Doctor, and that we'd love to have you back again, certainly if you'd agree to that as time goes on. Keep us updated. And a story we did not get to, and time was of the essence, is your movie that you're looking to produce about AI. So that is what? Going to be developed and utilizing AI to create a movie about AI, if I have it right. Is that correct?
Well, we're certainly going to use AI where it is beneficial, and I've used AI in developing the books where it's beneficial, but still it's a cooperation between the human mind and what AI can do.
It's a fascinating story. The website, Doctor, so people can go ahead and learn more. Again, if I haven't given it correctly, you get a moment to do that. Please continue.
Is 100yearstoextinction.com. 100yearstoextinction.com.
Dr. Sullivan, thank you for being up with us. It's early for you and many of the listeners. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being part of the Dr. Sky experience. The last Saturday of every month, as I mentioned before, we do a rebroadcast of the subject matter. We'll be talking about the great aviatrix, Amelia Earhart, and her story, for those that have not heard that. But stay tuned in June. So many exciting guests. We're going to be talking in another 2 weeks or so, or approximately another week, I should say more correctly, with an individual from NASA who's going to talk about the real science that we see about what might be happening with El Nino. Is it really going to be a super El Nino? And what happens with the sun? How is it connected? Many people believe that all weather is, of course, derived from the sun. That's an interesting story, but so much more. And Dr. Peter Sullivan, thank you for being part of our show, The Dr. Sky Experience. Email me at drsky@wabcradio.com. And while you're at it, why not download the WABC app? A great experience, as many will testify. Clear skies, ladies and gentlemen, as we move on. Take a look at some of the beautiful things occurring in the nighttime sky in the month of June. And you'd like to hear a Dr. Sky update, go to our podcast section at wabcradio.com for the Dr. Sky Experience. We do interject every once in a while, twice a month at least, what you can see in the nighttime sky, and we appreciate your comments. Now, stay tuned for the Powerhouse Talk Radio 77 WABC as we pass the torch of dialogue and conversation to Another Side of Midnight with Lionel. And I want to thank our navigators, as we call them, helmsmen, both Jackson and Bill, for making the sound of this radio station as good as you would expect. And what else would you expect? Thank you. Clear skies, good health, and we'll see you shortly.